Welcome back for another episode of MarketPulse Pros and Pioneers. I'm Paul, your host, and this week I'd love to welcome Hayley Meakes. Hayley, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you along. For those of you who don't know Hayley, she's award-winning marketer, speaker, and mindset coach. She's got over 20 years of experience. So she's the founder of Gain Momentum Marketing, and she's worked with global brands and won 4 national awards for effective marketing on a small budget. And I'm sure that's something that everybody who's listening to this show is interested in 2025. Hayley also hosts the Snippet podcast and has been named one of the top mindset coaches in the world by the Coach Foundation. And she's known for her one-page marketing workshop, which helps bridge the gap between clients and agencies through clear and actionable marketing strategies. And I like that. Because there always seems to be a step, doesn't there, Hayley, between I find you interesting, but I'm not sure if I want to work with you, and let's do some more detailed work together, because it's a big financial step, it's a big budgeting step, and that feels like a smart sort of common ground between a new client and yourself, right? That way you got started with it?
I think the way it happened is that I was doing a lot of brand and marketing training, and I'd get people come up to me at the end who wanted to have a go at agencies. And they'd say to me, I've paid this agency all of this money and they haven't delivered on what I wanted. So I said to them, okay, that's very interesting. And I'm not here to critique an agency or any agency, quite frankly. I said, what did you give the agency to work with? What was your brief? What was kind of, the background to what you were trying to achieve? Were there KPIs? Did you have something that you were looking to get to? And often what I found was they didn't have an idea themselves and they expected the agency to be a mind reader. And it is very, very difficult because I've always worked on the basis of garbage in is garbage out. You cannot expect, the agency's got a lot of skills, they've got a lot of experience, but they still need that input from the client. So the one-page marketing plan really was to help clients to understand the most important thing about marketing. And people are going to hate me for this. Marketing isn't rocket science, right? It really isn't. All it is about having a process and following a plan. So the idea of being able to give them a plan, which that they could then work on themselves, they could come up with the ideas themselves and then present it to the agency, we knew that they'd be so much further down the line. And then they could look at it and it would almost be like a contract that says, I've said this is who my ideal client is, this is my key messaging, this is my channels. So that there was something that the agency could actually sort of get to grips with it and really work with. So it was the best of both worlds as far as I was concerned.
Amazing. I love that idea. And it does. It's very much it kind of borrows what I do with partnerships from a business perspective, right? Like, why make life hard for the other person? If you want to partner with someone and you want to be effective at near-bound, lead driving, you've got to make life easy for people. Same goes for your clients. You wouldn't give your client a proposal and expect them to imply their own ROI, right? You wouldn't let them calculate that themselves. You put that number front and foremost. Go, we're gonna make you this amount of money, we think, by doing these things. Well, it makes sense. Why wouldn't you as a client want to accelerate what they're doing and give them an advantage, make it easy for your marketing agency? How?
Absolutely. And I think also the agency should be an extension of your team. So you should be all working on the same page. It shouldn't be client versus agency. It should be client and agency.
I agree. And I think that goes for a lot of partnerships in the business land. It becomes too much about, well, I've given you a lot of money this month and what have you shown me in return?
Absolutely.
The money is great, but like that's part of the reciprocity. It needs to be a two-way bridge. Hayley, why did you get started in marketing? What led to that path?
Well, I had a bit of a strange one, I'm not going to lie. I was the classic teenager at school who did A-levels because that was what was expected, and got to the age of 18 and thought, I don't know what I want to do. I knew I wanted to earn money. That was a fundamental driver, but I didn't want to go and spend 3 years at uni doing something that I had no interest in at the end. And I didn't want to get into debt. I was probably a little bit risk adverse at this stage. So I remember having a conversation with my mum, and she said, well, if you want to still live in this house, you have to get a job. So I was like, oh, okay. Rubbish. So I ended up, please don't hate me. You've got to promise you won't hate me. But I ended up working for the Inland Revenue for 2 years. I know.
Well, there's a skill set. There's a skill set.
Well, it's something, I tell you. So, and I remember there was one day I walked up to the front door of the offices, and I thought, and I looked up, and it was a really nasty grey day, and I thought, if this is the world of work, I want to go back to school. This is awful. I felt like the worst. I was so out of place. It was just not my thing. I'm a creative person, and this wasn't a creative world. And there were people there who were proud of the fact they'd been there 30 years. And I was thinking, oh my goodness, I considered it a personal shame. I'd got there nearly 2, I was thinking, oh, I've got to do something else. So a friend of mine had mentioned that he'd joined a missionary school. And he said, it's brilliant, H, you'll love it. He said, we get to do all of this great stuff of learning, and then we go all around the world helping people. And I said, that sounds really fun, right? I said, as I'm imagining myself, as a sort of like a modern day Mother Teresa, going around, helping the sick and, feeding the poor and all kinds of stuff. And what ended up after 4 months of living a very sort of sheltered life. I mean, it was a great place, but I was spending 2 months in Albania, working in orphanages, working with old people, delivering Bibles, all kinds of stuff. And then 2 months in Copenhagen working with drug addicts, alcoholics, and prostitutes. And I remember thinking, this has been fun, but it's not really me either. So by the time I came home, my dad decided to put his foot down. And he said, all good girls should become PA. That was his method in life. And there was a school in London, and he said, I'll send you to this school, Lucy Clayton School of, it was like proper old school. And I said, no, pay for the school, pay for me to go to the local college, and I'll do the same sort of course, just to get him off my back, really. So I did a business administration course, and I just it was one of those things. And I decided I didn't know what type of business I wanted to be in, so I'd go around pimping. And I ended up in an advertising agency. And it was like the light went on. And I was like, this is where I want to be. This is where I want to be. I love this world. It was crazy and it was manic. And there were loads of clients, and there's, ordering couriers and doing this and getting creative proofs. And this was like my world. This was such fun. So I realized I could do a marketing degree in the evening, which I did. And then I joined full-time for an educational marketing agency. And within 4 years, I'd gone from sort of junior secretary to senior account manager, the account director. So I just fell in love with that world. I fell in love with marketing, and I fell in love with the fact that, marketing can make a real difference.
It's amazing the amount of guests that we get on the show, that anyone who ends up in marketing, it seems that like we're drawn to it, but not on purpose. Yeah. We just kind of find ourselves here, and once we're there, really enjoy. I mean, I still don't class myself as a marketer, right? It's what I do. It's very much a part of what I do. Not a traditional marketer as such, but there's a lot of marketing elements to what I do, and I find that I'm actually really passionate about being curious about what makes people tick. Why would you buy that thing from that advert? Or why would this change of wording make a difference to what bonds you with this client or this customer? And I find that there's a lot of people, like, generally what I see with people is that there's a underlining tone that they were doing in their previous jobs, but they just weren't doing enough of it in their previous jobs. And I suspect it's something to do with people for yourself as well, right? And that's the connection to the next stage of your journey.
That is a brilliant summation, actually. I think it's a combination of 3 things. It's a combination of a genuine love of people, a sense of psychology. I love the concept of psychology and understanding how people think and how people's brain works. and why two people can go through the same experience and one of them can thrive and one of them can be knocked apart by it. And also, I'm just nosy. I think this is probably, it's all of those three things kind of in a nutshell. And, I consider I haven't had, but I've been very, very fortunate with the people that have been around me. And I just think, positivity breeds positivity, looking for the best in things and understanding people is just it's such a privilege to do what we do.
It is. And I think it's one of the few roles out there where you get to see an immediate impact to the things that you do and change as a result of those learnings. So you kind of get to do the full circle, whereas a lot of people get to see one side or the other. As a marketer, you get to make the learnings on one side, implement new ideas on the next side, and you almost get to just play on a daily basis. So to an extent, right? It's on somebody else's money a lot of the time, which is fascinating. And I do a lot of kind of test and learn on my own stuff so that I can implement things for customers. And that kind of brings me back to that kind of, there's a big undertone in your bio there around doing more with less in terms of client spend. And you said it yourself, right? Marketing's not rocket science. So walk us through your thoughts then on the difference between working with a small budget and a large budget for marketing and why you don't need a large budget.
I think, when I first started out in marketing, you did need a large budget. You did. If you look at the way that the marketing has gone over the ages, the first sort of marketing was all about, direct mail and advertising, and it hadn't changed for about 500 years. And then all of a sudden, content marketing, the social media, the internet, all of these things basically turned the industry on its head. And so many people now are competing against the big boys because they understand how they can harness and create their own audience and create their own tribe using content marketing and through that social media. And I think that's the big difference, because previously you'd have to have such a big budget for the media spend alone. And, the print budget was huge, that, it was very hard. Everything you were doing was pushing out. And now the whole point of marketing is about pulling and attracting your tribe.
Yeah. I like that. And I think that anybody who's got a clear proposition that they can articulate in a way that makes sense and emotionally connects them with their clients or their potential clients. Once upon a time, your business had to be local. You had to market in the local area. And it struck me a while back, that in the 2 years since I started traveling, I've never even considered trying to find clients in my local area. I don't need to, because my audience, my network is pretty global. I've got clients in North America, in South Africa, all across Europe. And I've got several in the UK as well, but none of them are local to me apart from one, which is very nice because we get to go for a coffee now and again. It's lovely. And I guess that means that the potential target market for a lot of businesses now is also global, right? It's impacted
100%.
on everyone.
And I think that's really important. I think, technology has meant that, that we're not in the same town. We're able to communicate. We're able to see each other face to face. We're able to have this dialogue and this conversation without physically being in the same room. And that's how things have evolved. The number of people who come to me and I say, who's your target audience? They go, everyone. And it's like, oh, please, come on. That used to be the case. It used to be like this. Let's hit as much stuff against the wall and see what sticks. Nowadays, you have to know your niche. You have to know your people, if you like, because that's who you're going to draw into your business.
And I think you need to know them in more detail than ever.
Massively,
I think, that customer research, there is so much customer research that's available. It almost floods you, and you've kind of got to be able to siphon off the stuff that's irrelevant or not as niche as you need it to be. I was talking to a guy the other day who was trying to figure out what films his customers like to watch. And I'm like, that is just such an insane level of detail to go to for a small business. Like once upon a time, you'd get customer focus groups for your big retailers and things like that, and they'd hone down on those things. But for a small business owner to be looking at those things, that's an amazing leap. At what point did you decide to become a mindset coach?
Well, it's a really interesting. It's many years ago, I had a car accident. I mean, at the very beginning of my marketing journey, and I remember being told I'd never walk again. You know, I remember the paramedic saying to my mum, "We don't know how she's got out of the car alive." It was just one of those things. I got hit head on, and I was in a Renault 5, which is like an inferior version to a Fiat 500 for people in the 2020.
Yeah.
And essentially, it was like a tin can. And the engine literally came through the car and came through my leg, essentially. And my leg just, and it, had to be rebuilt. And I remember them saying, "You're never going to be able to walk again. You're never going to be able to run. You're never going to be able to kickbox," because I was training for a competition at the time. "You're never going to be able to ski, and you're never going to be able to bungee jump." So the last one, I'm not going to lie, I wasn't that bothered about the bungee jumping, but I was just like, my life at the time was fitness and everything else. And I remember 8 weeks later, handing back my crutches and walking out of there. After all of this negativity, "You're never going to do this, you're never going to do that." In 2010, I ran the London Marathon. And obviously I don't compete at kickboxing, but I can still kickbox and I can still box. I have skied once really badly. I just didn't enjoy it. It wasn't that I couldn't do it. I just didn't particularly enjoy it. And it's like, and I thought what I did was quite normal. I thought, you have a problem, you apply your mindset skills to that problem, and then you carry on. And then I remember when I started my speaker training, because I wanted to be able to speak on marketing and business, they were like wowed by this story. And they said, "Well, explain to me how you've done that." And I ended up creating my own mindset model called Basics. And, it was very important to me. And they said, "Well, where does this come from?" And I'd come from a single parent family. My mum suffered with bipolar. So I had the huge blessing of spending a lot of time with my grandparents. And my granddad had been in World War II. And he'd been in Burma in World War II. And my granddad was Tottenham born and bred, literally. I mean, and so he'd never really been out of London. And when he found out, that everyone was being enlisted, he was like, "I want to be part of this. I want to serve my country." And in those days, what they did was they put you together with your community and your friends, so you were a troop. And they said that that's how you bonded better. And Grandpa ended up in Burma. Now, for someone who'd never really been outside London, that was like, can you imagine the culture shock of that? Of never knowing that, are you going to come home again? Are you going to see your loved ones again? It must have been horrific. Anyway, somewhere in the 5 years, due to a paperwork mix-up in London, Grandpa was transferred to another troop. And I remember saying to him, "Well, how's that, Grandpa?" And he went, "Well, I was a bit annoyed at the time. I won't use these that much." He was annoyed. But he later found out that this paperwork mix-up had saved his life because his original troop had been ambushed and killed. And so this led to Grandpa's 3 rules for life, which, bearing in mind we spent so much time with him, I picked up, I paid attention. And the first one, most important one, is to live every day as your best day for the people that didn't get to come home. So every day I wake up with an attitude of gratitude and I think about the positives, And some days it's just that I've woken up. You don't have to have like massive reasons. It doesn't have to be earth-shattering. It can just be, I'm just grateful I can get out of my bed today. I can walk to my bathroom. I can walk to my kitchen. They were telling me I couldn't do these things, The second thing is to face everything that happens to you, again, with this attitude of positivity, because what you think is meant for your poor health or your detriment can also be for your benefit. It's like with Grandpa, he moving the troops over his life. So you never know what's happening and what's around the corner. And you can look at it and go, oh my goodness, your car accident was bad, but the resilience that it gave me
Yeah.
and the lessons that it taught me, I couldn't have wished for more. And to be honest, I don't suffer from any of my injuries. I really am very fortunate indeed. And the third thing, and Grandpa would say that this is the most important one, you can support any football team you like as long as it's Tottenham Hotspur. It's that doesn't teach you resilience and positive mindset. I don't know what does, And so I had this on
certainly
one
does
side.
this year, I can see. Yeah.
Oh gosh, tell me about it. Don't have faith in hands, don't you worry, don't say. So I had this one side of my family, and then the other side of my family, my uncle was an amateur athlete who suddenly became Olympic champion. So he came from a single parent home in a council house in London, and he became Olympic, world, Commonwealth, and European champion. And it just proved that if you put your mind to it, if you work hard and you apply yourself and you're really focused on your dreams, you can achieve whatever you want.
I think it's probably about how you choose to experience things, right? Like you can go through, like, the problem I have with a lot of people that I speak to is that they're stuck in a victim mentality. And that's not their
Definitely.
fault, but it
No.
is really hard for them to get out of. And I really struggle to deal with people who are victim mentality. And, when you start talking to people about you can choose to experience this in a different way, people who are stuck in a victim mentality can't, because they just can't see past where they're at. And people who've already made that leap, who've transformed their mindset, they're in the growth mindset, scarcity, whatever that looks like for them, they can see the importance of what that sentence means for people. How did that, so growing up around all of that, there's a phenomenal kind of psychological background that you've got there, and lots of lessons and experience to draw on. And I can imagine, we've talked already, it made you very curious about what makes people tick. What was the clinching moment where you thought, do you know what, I can go and do this?
I think when you look at it, and there's a lot of things that you can focus on. It's like recently my husband got a new car, and I'm not saying Mr. Boasty got a new car. I'd never heard of it. I'm not a car person, but everywhere I go now, I see this car. Okay, same color. His car. Now, I don't know whether I never noticed those cars before, or the fact was those cars weren't important to me because they weren't on my radar. And I think the issue that I've learned above all is what you focus on is what you see more of. So if your focus is on positivity, if your focus is on gratitude, if your focus is on looking for the silver lining, if you like, then you'll see more. If your focus is on what's gone wrong, if your focus is on how hard your life is, you'll see more of that. And I think it's very simple. It's just about turning the dial. And sometimes it's going to start by feeling really weird, but you almost have to kind of think of great things to be thankful for, and start that positive process as part of the mindset. And so, with the basics, the first thing is believe in yourselves. Acquire your power team. Make sure you've got the right people around you. Make sure you've got those radiators and not those drains. Have a strategy for success. People, you look at all the great people who've achieved in the world. They've all got a plan. They've surrounded themselves by the right people, and they've got a plan. Invest in yourself, whether that is time on getting yourself right. Now, for some people, that might be overcoming things that have happened in their past. It might be learning new skills. It might be, taking themselves to the next level, but actually taking the time in themselves. And the other thing is, it's about carrying on, if you like. Sometimes we quit just before we get to the optimum moment. And there's a book by Sharon Lecter called 3 feet from gold. And it talked about the gold mining people in America. And they said so many of them gave up just before they were about to reach the big breakthrough. And it's about having the sense of knowing when is it time to quit because there is no future in this. And when is it, come on, it just needs another push, another piece of effort. And the final one is about smashing it out of the park, celebrating little successes, thinking about those little wins. What are your little wins? Every day you can have little wins, I mean, I've nearly been 11 months without a cigarette. And it started off cabinet days. And I was thinking, I'm going to do another day, and not thinking I'm never going to have one again, but literally being grateful for the fact that, I've looked up. Now I've done this for a week. This has happened. Oh, look. And now, and focusing and going, yeah, that's great. I've saved this amount of money. Now what am I going to do? So I think it's just about little steps. And I think too often, people, it's like with New Year. Every New Year, people try and change their life by implementing 1,000 resolutions, as opposed to saying, okay, what's the one thing I want to achieve and how can I break that down so it's manageable and it's sustainable?
Yeah. I think that's fair. I released a video. I mean, obviously this is going out. This is going out in Easter, which is it's a weird time to be talking New Year's resolutions. But I released a video yesterday where I said exactly the same thing. Like, I'm a big disbeliever in New Year's resolutions for the sake of New Year's resolutions, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I believe that every day should be an opportunity to try something new, and it shouldn't boil down to New Year's Day. You shouldn't be waiting for January the 1st to make those decisions. There should be something that you think about, analyze, and decide on any day, any week of the year. And if things aren't broken for you, don't change them. I see so many people making new business resolutions for January the 1st. And actually, they're already pretty successful and they don't need a business resolution. They just need to keep doing what they're doing and just keep believing in what they're doing and the clients that they have and just do more of it or do it better or tweak it slightly. It doesn't need a New Year's resolution. We're kind of coming to the end of the half hour now. I could probably talk for another hour or two with you on all of these topics. I've really enjoyed this. It's been nice to chat.
Oh, thank you.
We talk about you being a mindset coach. Who are your ideal clients out there, and what are they thinking right now that might lead them to your door?
The biggest thing that we find is there's a lot of people out there who really that they need a combination of things. They're probably a business owner and they've been relatively successful, but they're spending too much time working in their business and not on their business. And they're dropping the balls in other areas of their life. They need to have accountability. They need to feel that they've got a safe space to upskill, to share successes, share challenges, and to feel that supportive community, but most of all, to have that accountability. So they want to be able to have almost like that virtual board. So for them, it's about, surrounding themselves with people who've been there, done that. And that's one of the things that we really love to do is to surround them with other really good people. And so that they can then take their business to that, scale it up and take it to that next level.
Fantastic. And if people are listening along, Hayley, and they've enjoyed the story, the background, maybe it resonates with their own story and why they're where they are, how can they reach out to find out more about either gain momentum marketing or the mindset coaching?
Well, do you know what? Probably the best thing is LinkedIn. I am the only me on LinkedIn. Could you believe it? There's only one Hayley Meakes on LinkedIn. So please connect. It would be great to connect. Send me a little note and then we'll start the journey.
I once did an experiment and searched for Paul Banks on the internet, and there's a lot of us out there. I connected with quite a lot of Paul Bankses on Facebook. It was a weird thing that I did, but I really enjoyed it, and it's quite a fun story to tell. So I've got a friend out in South Africa who is a rapper. I've got a friend out in Texas in America who's a music producer. I put them together. I've got a friend not far from me who lives in my hometown with the same name, but there are tens of thousands of Paul Bankses out there. Thankfully, I'm the only one that posts anything of any substance on LinkedIn. So I've managed to get to #1 ratings on LinkedIn.
I love that.
I absolutely
love that. And I love the fact of the 6 degrees of separation, right? So we're all connected to anyone else in the world by 6 degrees or six
It's true.
connection. And so I realized the other day I'm actually connected to Donald Trump in less than 6. Whether that's a
Amazing,
good
isn't
thing
it?
or a bad thing, people can decide. But I was quite impressed by it, if nothing else.
Yeah, it's the power of network. It's a power of network. And
Exactly that.
if you can share your story and share a bit of you that connects you with other people, and you're mixing with other good networkers who can do the same, then there's a real power to be behind. I'm a big believer in networking, huge believer in it. Thank you very much for coming along today, Hayley, for being a lovely guest on the show.
Oh, thank
Thank
you.
you at home for coming along and listening to us or watching the video. And I look forward to seeing you next week for another episode. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us for today's show. I hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to feature on a future show, or you've got some ideas for folks who would make a great guest, please drop us a line. Contact details are in the show notes, and I'd love to hear from you. Your host today was me, Paul Banks, founder at Javelin Content Management. Here at Javelin, we specialise in helping busy business owners just like you to repurpose video content, taking all the stress and tech problems away and turning your long-form video into literally hundreds of pieces of content without breaking the bank. We describe it as getting ideas out of your head into video and out to your socials. If you want to launch your personal brand, become the vendor of choice for your audience, or maximise your sales revenue impact, we'd love to hear from you. Join us next Wednesday for the next episode, and don't forget to subscribe and give us a review. Our podcast is only possible with your continued support.